great first question. And I think the foundation for what we're doing is that we're seeing now that renewable electricity is now the cheapest way of producing electricity around the world. So I grew up in Australia, and much like Australia and Indonesia, we relied on coal as the foundation for our electricity sector. But now we're seeing that solar and wind is becoming the cheapest way of producing electricity. And we can also transition from making hydrogen from fossil fuels to making hydrogen from clean electricity. So in the next 5 years, I guess what we're looking to see is to move from projects. We've seen hundreds of small-scale demonstration projects around the world, moving to larger scale electrolysis, larger scale, and sort of replacing the hydrogen that we make from fossil fuels and turning it into green hydrogen. So we want to see in the next 5 years more of those larger projects come to market. The biggest challenge, I think, is the commercial viability of these projects, especially in terms of getting started. You mentioned the sort of hard-to-abate sectors as a priority. I agree. We're not going to use green hydrogen everywhere. Where we can use direct electrification, we should do that. Where we can use batteries and other long-term storage, we should do that. But there are some industries, like the fertilizer industry, the steel industry, some sectors like shipping and aviation, where we can't use direct electrification, we can't use batteries, we need to use the chemical properties of green hydrogen. So we know that green hydrogen is going to play an important long-term role in decarbonizing those industries. The challenge is, how do we get started? Because the first few projects are going to be relatively expensive, and so it's about finding innovative ways to finance those projects so we can get started. I think the foundation for this energy transition is electrification. Renewable electricity is now the cheapest way of producing electricity, and we should be greening our grids as much as possible. Replacing coal, replacing gas with solar, wind, hydro, geothermal. And the reason we should do that is good for the environment, but it's just also good economics. It means everyone can benefit from cheaper electricity. In terms of where green hydrogen fits into that, green hydrogen, of course, you will use a lot of electricity. So in some places around Indonesia, green hydrogen or green ammonia or green methanol production facilities will provide some of the demand to catalyze the development of those projects. So rather than thinking about green hydrogen as sort of isolated off the grid, we like to think about the opportunities to integrate green hydrogen into the grid. But the overall goal is, what I think we should be focusing on, is making sure that everyone in the world, everyone in Indonesia, should have access to clean, cheap, reliable electricity, and we'll use that for all kinds of purposes, including some green hydrogen applications. So that's a great question, and I think one of the challenging questions that we're working with stakeholders here in Indonesia is how do we best get started? Where are the industries that can be the kinds of early movers? So Indonesia in the past has been a sort of energy superpower because of your oil and natural gas. Those reserves are running out. They're not running out overnight, but we have an opportunity to transition from oil and gas to renewables and green hydrogen. So the immediate challenge is, well, what sectors are going to lead that transition? Just today we've had a workshop focusing on the maritime sector. And that's particularly interesting because green hydrogen is going to play a crucial long-term role there. We're starting to see that ship owners are building ships that will use green methanol and green ammonia. And so there's an opportunity in the Indonesian market to develop the renewable resources to produce green hydrogen and then green hydrogen derivatives like ammonia and methanol and supply that market. So we have the resources, we have the technical know-how, and we have the demand and the customers. The challenge is to put those pieces together and use that as a foundation for a new industry. See, that's a really good question. I think my answer is going to be a little bit unconventional, in that this isn't a story that relies on some technological breakthrough. I'm based in Norway. Actually, in Norway, we used electrolysis to produce hydrogen in the early 1900s. So this is a proven technology. We're not relying on some magical technical breakthrough. What we are relying on is developing projects at scale and the continually falling cost of renewable electricity. That's the kind of formula. So we're leveraging cheaper renewables, and we're building electrolysis, not small-scale projects, 1 megawatt, 5 megawatts, but 100 megawatts, 500 megawatts. And it's the economies of scale and cheap electricity that will bring down the cost of green hydrogen. But we're not waiting for some breakthrough in technology, although we are seeing all the time, small advancements in electrolysis technology, new membranes. But really, this is just about developing the experience of building these projects at scale, and that will drive down the cost. It is, although it's not a new commodity, like we already globally, we produce and use 100 million tonnes of hydrogen every year. All of that today, almost all of it, comes from natural gas or from coal. So we're not really creating a new market per se. I mean, we might, in 30 years, we might be using 200 or 300 or 400 million tonnes. So the market, overall market is growing. But we are changing fundamentally the way that we will be producing this hydrogen. And that's challenging. So for the companies that are involved early, they're taking on a considerable amount of risk. And in order to do that, they need to have clarity from government about what the long-term direction is. So, it's certainly not impossible, but it's not something that just one company can do alone, or that one government can do alone. So it's necessarily a sort of collaborative process where we work together, the producers and the consumers, with the infrastructure providers in the middle. And governments, of course, have a really important role to play in terms of setting the overall strategic direction and strategy. And in some cases, here in Indonesia, for example, there's a vigorous debate about, we use fossil fuel subsidies today to reduce the cost of diesel, for example. So how can we encourage the development of alternative fuels? Should we also provide subsidies to match that? Or should we change the way we subsidize things and redirect the funding? So all of that is important in terms of understanding how are we going to catalyze the development of these new production, infrastructure, and consumption patterns. I think the starting point is that we need to look at, especially the subsidies that are in place today. And I think the work that the IMF and others have done, they've shown that we globally, we spend hundreds of billions of dollars each year providing public subsidies for fossil fuels. And those fossil fuels cause significant environmental and social harm. There are also industries that are incredibly profitable. So it's not immediately clear, why do we need to provide big subsidies to an oil and gas industry that's very profitable? So I think the starting point should be, we should stop subsidizing the commodities that we want to exit from. And we should look at, not saying that we need to subsidize green hydrogen in perpetuity, but when people are taking a significant risk and investing in new technologies, if we reduce the subsidies that we're providing to fossil fuels, then we have more resources available to do demonstration projects in the sectors where we know we're going to need green hydrogen in the long term. That includes fertilizer production, aviation and maritime fuels, green steel production. So yeah, I think that there's a very bright future for green hydrogen. The challenge of the next 3 to 5 years is to support those early mover projects. And that will involve government, industry, and also civil society and the communities that are hosting these projects, collaborating together so that we can bring these new technologies into the marketplace. You have a background, and I actually have a background as well, working in the oil, gas and mining industry, which have been a huge contributor to the development of Indonesia, Australia, where I grew up, and Norway, where I live now. It's generated an enormous amount of wealth, but it has also led to significant environmental, social, and governance issues. I have a background working in particular on anti-corruption initiatives. And we've actually started to see in the green hydrogen industry also concerns about environmental impacts, social impacts, and governance issues. We've seen some examples of corruption related to auctions for renewable permits and corruption allegations. So one thing that's also a priority, we talk about green hydrogen because it has the potential to decarbonize, but it also has the potential to drive economic growth. But we need to make sure that we learn the lessons from the extractive industries and that we look at the emissions, but we also look at these environmental, social, and governance aspects as they're equally important so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past.